Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. This has been a pretty interesting week when it comes to EVE Online. Of course, you can already see in the background that the Triglavians have taken over the billboards in New Eden, and they're sending out an interesting message, I would say, to New Eden and to the Capsuleers. So this was actually a video that was first discovered by HoboLeaks, I believe, and I saw it posted on Reddit. Super interesting. I do love this. Lots of lore stuff, and they're actually expanding this time the lore of the Triglavians. Actually, yeah, having that one meet the their enemies. We basically now know that the Sancha and presumably the Drifters are their major enemies, and that yeah, there's, well, it sort of feels like they are kind of religious about the space that they inhabit, where they consider it to be some sort of flow that needs to be protected. So very, very interesting, and also super interesting that it actually has sound now in space. If I've not on the Jita billboard itself, but I'm gonna presume on the gates. I'll have to take a look at that. I saw a CCP dev post that these now actually have a sound as well. So really cool. I saw the leak, so I was already aware that something like that was coming. Probably a little bit early. I think that the CCP had planned this for Amsterdam, which is next week. So could be very interesting what we'll find out there. But I must imagine, if you don't know anything about that, if you don't follow up as closely as I do, and as closely as a lot of you guys do, of course, as well, then this would be a very interesting situation to be in the game all of a sudden, to come to a gate and to all of a sudden see and hear this weird message on the gates there. So yeah, really, really nice. I absolutely love that CCP is doing this. The other big news, I would say, is of course the dev blog on the balance changes that are coming. I think most people are very positive about that. They're definitely looking into the problems with capital ships. There's also some nerfs to the Rorqual, but I don't think that they're that major. It's basically, again, a bit of nerfing of the excavator drone. Let's move on, first of all, as we always do, to the New Eden store. Take a quick look at that one. So the sales are gone, but we do have a new skin, the Metamataria Exotica skin for the Triglavian ships. So it's all about the Triglavians at the moment in EVE Online. They're definitely front and center, and I think it's pretty cool. I had my doubts about the lore when it comes to Triglavians, you know, when it was first introduced and we were basically stuck with just Abyssal Dead Space, but now it obviously looks like CCP has more plans, so I'm all for it. Let's move on to the market, of course. That's why we are all here. And as always, we're going to start with plex and stuff at 315. Like that. So here we go, plex and stuff, and to my surprise we are moving back up for plex, heading towards 4 million ISK in Jita. Average price on the chart 3.9 million. So let's take a look at that. Jita now, well, in the like maybe 10-15 minutes it took me to get started for EVE Talk. We are at 4 million ISK for the sellers, 3,860,000 for the buyers. That is in Jita 4.4. So if we take out the filter so we can take a look at what's happening in the trade hubs, we do go down to almost 3.9 million, although this is 8 jumps out. And if we go 1 jump out in perimeter, it's 3,950,000 ISK pretty much for the sellers. Do the buyers go up? Not really. They're just below 3.9 million. So the sellers are driving the price of plex back up to another 1-year high point and getting very close to that 4 million ISK price mark. I, again, if you look at this chart, think that this is the right time to be selling plex if you're looking for liquid ISK. Next up, we have the multiple pilot train certificates. Here we can see that a little bit of hesitation. So I must say that I do expect the top 4 plex to show up pretty soon as well. Perhaps Amsterdam and the new announcements might have driven some people back to the game to at least come and take a look at it. I immediately saw that on the Corax buff, it's not a big buff, but on the Corax buff, lots of people said that they were gonna come back to the game. So we'll see if they have an actual impact here, but the multiple pilot train certificates are basically flat above 1.75 billion ISK. This is of course for 1 month training time, whereas you need 500 plex for a month of training time for the equivalent. So it's 1,830,000,000 pretty much for the sellers and just below 1.8 billion for the buyers. Actually pretty narrow margin here. The market is willing to pay 1.8 billion for the training certificates at the moment. Next up we have the skill extractor that is of course continuing its upwards motion as well, because it is absolutely tied to the plex price, and so we are at an all-time high for this one as well. 441 million ISK for the sellers, 430 for the buyers, and almost 448 for the sellers in JITA. So that's actually again another step up. 430, 440 in perimeter, 448 in JITA 4.4. So that makes a bit of a bigger margin here between sellers and buyers in JITA itself, especially because here the buyers go down to 411 before you find one in JITA. Very interesting situation here, I must say. It does look like the perimeter trade hub has basically taken over the skill extractor trading for the most part, although there are still decent volumes in JITA as well, of course. Well, makes for an interesting situation. If you can grab them from JITA, you actually might have a better time on the buyer side of things. So interesting. Next up we have the skill injectors. Here are the large skill injectors that are now also going up and are breaking the 900 million ISK mark on the chart here. Let's take a quick look at the sellers at 907 million. Again, player owned trade hub has a lot of them, and we go up to 927.5 million in JITA 4.4. That's actually very interesting as well. And the buyers are at almost 900 million ISK. So again, in the trade hubs, very narrow margin, and you actually have to go up quite a bit in sell price in JITA 4.4. So very, very interesting situation. Looks like the extractor injector market might really be moving to the trade hubs. Next up we have the small skill injector also jumping up a little bit. Hesitation at the tail end, but of course yet another 1 year high point. 183 million for the sellers in perimeter, not that many of them. Now it's JITA that comes in at 186, and then the buyers are just below 180 million ISK. And then finally we have the daily alpha injectors that are finally flat, but also doing so at that 1 year high point. Not yet willing to go to 70 million ISK, but they're at 68, 69.4 in the trade hubs, and then 69.9 for the sellers in JITA 4.4. Buyers coming in at 65.5. Also another great time to be selling, in my opinion. Yep, the plex related stuff super high at the moment. A great time to be selling it. Next up we have the minerals coming in at 810, let's say. Your immediate reaction might be, oh, they're announcing some nerfs to the excavators, let's see those prices go up. But as we probably know by now, there is a little bit of inertia in the mineral market, just because so much has been mined that there are too many stocks, and there is no way that there is an immediate reaction, in my opinion. So let's take a look here at titanium. You can see that we are basically continuing to fight off the 4.5 ISK barrier to try and stay above that successfully. So for now, sellers coming in at 467, buyers coming in at 444, and here the trading obviously still happens in JITA at the moment. Next up we've got pyrite. Let's take a look at that chart. Actually back down a little bit. That was to be expected. We tried to get back to 4 ISK. That hasn't quite worked out. So now there's a bit of hesitation about where we want to go. Sellers coming in at 3.8 ISK. Again, look at the volumes here. 1.5 billion, 2 billion. Once we got close to that 4 ISK, the volumes came out, and that is when the price, of course, has to give way a little bit. So, yeah, pyrite. We'll see how much momentum this downturn has. Buyers coming in at 377, though, very close to that 380 mark. So basically, the gap between the sellers and buyers has pretty much been closed on this downturn here. Next up, we have Mixalon. same pattern again, a holding pattern at the lower end of the chart here, going back to less than 60 ISK by quite a bit. 58.91 for the sellers, 56.47 for the buyers. Yeah, this is to be expected, of course. Even a nerf now, right now on a patch would not immediately have a big impact on the mineral market, in my opinion. It might spur some investments, so we might see some volume spikes, I think, in the upcoming days and weeks as people start to take their positions around this information, but there is just so much of it out there that I don't think it's going to have that big of an effect. Next up, we've got Isogen, a bit of a surprise, going back up towards 20 ISK. Alright, not bad. Definitely trying to find its bottom here, but the response, so we've got the average price. Let's see what we can spot here. 19, does it say how close? It's supposed to be really close to 20 ISK for the average price, but you can see that the tens up to 160 millions then immediately come in. So we did get to 20, then 1975, but then right here 50 million, another 27 million, another 32 million. All of those in the last 24 hours already driving the price back down to 1919, and the buyers coming in at 18 ISK 0.84. So this is a little bit of an increase in price, but as I've said, there's so much stuff out there that the response is immediate. Lots of volumes coming in, trying to grab that price of above 19 ISK, and it is not to last. This will go back down very quickly. Next up, we have Noxium, the best performer for the whole year here, staying at 300 ISK or just above that. 310 pretty much for the sellers and 292 for the buyers. After that, we've got the former Nulsic Minerals. Here is Zydrine flat at 500 ISK. Really not that much to say. At some point, the market will have to find its price, of course, and it looks like it's around 500 ISK for both Zydrine and Megasite. They're really not moving that much from that price point, and that is basically the new normal for Zydrine and Megasite, because, well, the supplies don't come only from Nulsic and normal space anymore. People can just moon mine, and they do a lot of that in HiSec in 0.5 systems. 510 ISK for the sellers, 483 for the buyers. Again, pretty flat. I actually think that for the changes to the Rorqual, if you do try to really nerf that chip, the impact might actually be the lowest on Zydrine and Megasite, and might be higher on stuff like Tritanium and Mexalon, which are bottlenecks either in transport or in local production for Nulsic. Next up, we do have Megasite that's actually dipping below 500 ISK, reversing its normal situation, but it is because of a wider margin. So it's 534 for the sellers, but 482 ISK for the buyers, and the average seems to win out on the buyer side, because right now the price has dipped on average to less than 500 ISK, which is kind of strange. You're probably able to buy Megasite, whoops, here we go, put up a buy order for Megasite and be successful at a lower price than you would for Zydrine. Okay, kind of a weird situation, but that's just the one we find ourselves in. And then next up, we have Morphite, that after reaching that 1 year low point of an average price of 7,250 ISK pretty much, does jump back up on increased volume. So here we have, of course, investors making their move. We're back to 8,200 for the sellers, 7,700 for the buyers. So that was obviously kind of a crazy situation and the right time to make a move on Morphites. Next up, we have PI coming in at 1330. Like that. Let's take a look at these. So generally speaking, for now, it does look like plex and stuff is really high, and that there's lots of ISK flowing in there. We're playing with 1 year high points. I think 4 million ISK for plex is gonna be like an all-time high. Does feel kind of crazy. The reverse of that is, of course, the minerals. Those are super low at the moment. There's no real ISK flowing in that market. It's just completely oversupplied. And then next up here we have PI that has that mixed picture, we have the non-fuel related PI materials that seem to be hovering at a less than average price, and the broadcast notes are bearing that out here, with the price going on average to less than 2 million ISK. But we get the fuel related PI materials that in the last couple of months have just gone from strength to strength. To my surprise, I don't know how long they can keep up, but here you basically have a healthy market where you get a bit of both sides here. So the broadcast notes here now selling for less than 2 million ISK, buyers coming in at less than 1.9 million ISK. You can see that this is definitely pretty low on the chart as well. An opportunity, in my opinion, to grab some cheap broadcast notes if you expect CCP to come out with some structures in the near future, of course. The construction blocks managed to get back to that average of 12,000 ISK, almost 12.5k, so did good in the last couple of weeks, but it's not the last. Look at that, going back down to 11,000 ISK for the sellers, 10,500 for the buyers, back to a less than average price. Consumer electronics is trying to do the same thing, and here it was in mid-February that we managed to get back to that 14,000 ISK normal average for consumer electronics. But again, very sharp drop off, just like with construction blocks now, very sharp drop off from those average prices, and now we're back in the 12 to 13,000 ISK range, which is actually 13,500 for the sellers and 12,000 for the buyers, but the average price is definitely below average because of that. And then we have the first one of those winners at the moment, you could say, if you consider a high price to be a winner, of course, which is Coolants, that is actually holding on to pretty much a 15,000 ISK price, but today's average is quite a bit lower. So let's take a look at what's happening. Yeah, sellers have to give some ground here, 14,000 for the sellers, buyers coming in at 11,800. Does look like these want to drive the price back down, but right now the average is still really high for Coolants. A great time to be producing and selling that. Enriched uranium, same type of chart, right? A year of straight upwards trajectory, and now above 15,000 ISK. 16,000 for the sellers, 14,600 for the buyers. So this one is really still very strong, close to its 1 year high point. Coolants, you know, has to give a little bit of ground, and we will see those buyers have definitely gone pretty low all of a sudden. And it could be that Coolants is set to go back down quite a bit because of that, but enriched uranium is still super strong. The integrity response drones next. Here you can clearly see, right, normal average 2.5 million, perhaps even a little bit above that. Second half of the year here we are down to the 2.2 to 2.5 million range, and we're definitely there right now. 2.5 million for the sellers, 2.3 million for the buyers. Mechanical parts, that's fuel related. You can also start to see a bit of hesitation. Here we go up to 13, almost 14k even at the end of February, but now we get a bit of hesitation. Still, looking at this 1 year chart, a very strong performer. 12,400 for the sellers, 11,500 for the buyers. Just like Coolants though, has to give back a little bit of those massive gains. It is no longer straight up here. At the tail end we are seeing some hesitation. Nuclear reactors, ooh, that's a big dive down to less than 90,000 ISK here, playing with those low points. Let's see where the buyers are at. 86,000. You can see there's no interest in nuclear reactors anymore at the moment. The sellers are coming in and driving the price down from 103,000, 97,000, 92,000, and then someone is saying screw it, 87,000. Get rid of those nuclear reactors. They're not in vogue, which is a bit of a shame, because it was a very good suggestion like a couple of years ago, and nuclear reactors were going completely bonkers. You maybe even see the tail end of that right here at the start of this 1 year chart. Lots of volatility, lots of trade potential, with buy opportunities well below 100,000 ISK, and then sell opportunities at 13,000, 14,000 and even higher. So it's too bad, but the current situation in the non-fuel PI materials seem to be that we are below average, and that does gut the nuclear reactors market completely. I'm gonna keep it here. Who knows, perhaps towards the summer we'll see a bit of a comeback, especially on the right announcement from CCP. I don't have any special information, but you know, if you remember what CCP has always talked about, stuff like the propaganda towers should still be on the roadmap, so we will see. We're definitely keeping that in the category and hope for better times. Organic mortar applicators try to get back to the 1.1 million average, but is already moving back down. A bit less than 1.1 million for the sellers and just above 1 million for the buyers. Robotics next, working its way back above 100,000 ISK. That's definitely good news, I think, for those that are hoping for high prices for fuel-related materials. So 100,000 ISK for the sellers, 96,000 ISK for the buyers of robotics. It is basically its 1 year average, but in the last couple of months we dipped to the 95k range, and now we are back at the 100,000 ISK, which, you know, is the normal price. Keep in mind though, 95,000 to 100,000 ISK is really a very slow margin, a very low margin. So this is actually like pretty much no volatility. To show like a somewhat decent, here is a 90k view of the chart. Super flat actually for robotics so far this year. Self-harmonizing power cores showing that drop off, and then it does happen. You can see here, so we went to less than 1.9 million on a couple of days, but now the volumes are coming in. People are taking those positions in their advanced PI material markets. So less than 2 million still for the sellers. Buyers are below 1.9 million ISK. That is definitely below average. If you look at this 1 year charts, 2.1 million should be the average price. You're getting them on the cheap for sure. This was an obvious 1 year low point, and obviously investors have started to make their moves. Superconductors next. Alright, a surprise upwards one here, heading back for 13,000 ISK on its average, 13,400 in fact for the sellers, 12,300 for the buyers. Basically a slightly above average price right now for the superconductors. Test cultures are still down to less than 8,000 ISK, 8,150 for the sellers and 7,700 for the buyers. Definitely still below average. And then we get the wetware mainframes that are stuck at the 2.25 million mark, which, well, normally it can manage 2.5 from time to time. Now it's just not going anywhere. 2.3 million for the sellers, 2 million for the buyers. So even here, if we try to make 2 million, if you look at 2 million on the chart, the buyers are definitely really low for these advanced PI materials at the moment. That is okay. I think there are definitely some opportunities. Nothing on the short term though. It's really, in my opinion, the gamble on advanced PI materials and another structure that that make up the bulk of the opportunities in PI at the moment. Other than that, yeah, fuel stuff. I personally really like producing that because of the constant demand, and it's selling at a great price at the moment. Advanced Moore materials next, coming in at 22 minutes. Alright, let's take a look at these. Interesting. Crystalline carbonites diving to the 1 year low point, playing with 150 on the chart, 155 for the sellers, 148.4 for the buyers. I would say, if you look at this chart, it's a buy opportunity. Try to grab it below 150. You're grabbing some crystalline carbonites below the entire chart, and it makes a lot of sense, except, of course, just like with PI, where you're dependent on a CCP announcement pretty much to really have a good payday. Here you are dependent on some real nullsec destruction before this will actually make you any ISK. But it is a 1 year low point, quite obvious on the charts. I do expect to see some volume increases by next week. Ferrite carbide, same thing. Defined 1 year low point in fact, and we can already see the volumes coming in and the price flattening out here at the moment. And then 42 ISK for the sellers, 130 for the buyers, and I'm not sure, did I try to grab that Ferrite carbide? Yeah, I grabbed some at 135 ISK myself, so I am ready with that investment for Ferrite carbide, and this is an obvious one in my opinion. Below the entire chart, 1 year low point, and we're not the only one. Traders seem to agree. The volumes have gone up already. Next up we have the titanium carbide. That one's a no, unfortunately, stuck at around 180 in all likeliness. We saw that we could go lower, 188 for the sellers and 179 for the buyers. And then we get tungsten carbide, that is in the same situation. Here we had an opportunity in October to grab below the entire chart, but now we're stuck at a less than average price. Let's take a look at those metamaterials. Next, of course, with the carbide price, at least for crystalline and ferrite, going down like that, perhaps it could result in more opportunities. But here, photonic metamaterials have been at their low points in the last couple of months quite a bit. And you can see the volume spiking up from time to time as well, now driving the price back up to 17,240. The buyers coming in at 16,400. That is pretty cheap still, though. So right now, photonic metamaterials, basically people are taking their positions and we are trading at really low prices at the moment. Would I make a move on that? To be honest, this looks a lot better to jump in than this. Next up we have the plasmonic metamaterials. Same thing, right? Last couple of, well, not months this time, but last couple of weeks we were definitely at 1 year low points as well. Volume increase, people take their position and we are back to 21,500 for the sellers, 20,500 for the buyers. So that opportunity is over. It was really late February, early March where you could have grabbed some very cheap plasmonic metamaterials. After that we have the non-linear metamaterials also going up a little bit in price, but not from a high point. That's to be expected if it's tied to titanium carbide. And then we have terahertz metamaterials that are actually dropping quite low here on a couple of occasions. 21,000 on the chart, it's 22,500 for the sellers, 21,000 for the buyers. It's a bit of a gamble if you want to take that opportunity. I personally don't think so. I think we can go lower. For the other advanced PI materials, we get the fermionic condensates that are continuing their downtrend from last week, now hitting 90,000 ISK. If we go substantially lower than that for the buyers, and we do 84,200, this might be the right time to jump in on that. Look at that. It's definitely below the entire chart. If you can grab at these prices, we've been going straight down for pretty much a month, and so I do think that you can grab some cheap fermionic condensates right now. Ferrogel, after breaking 45,000, going back up a little bit, 46 for the sellers, 45,000 for the buyers. Next up here we get fullerite, continuing the downtrend as well, playing with the 1 year lows yet again, 875, buyers coming in at 900. I'd be a bit more patient, honestly. This seems to have legs, this seems to be quite under pressure. I think I want to be patient, and I think that if an opportunity is going to arise, it might arise in the upcoming week or so. Hypersynaptic fibers back up a little bit for the week, definitely again trading well below average at the moment, but not super pronounced that it's in a great spot. Nanotransistors, very weird, super stable average price of 484 around there. So sellers coming in at 4,940, buyers at 4,650. That is really weird actually. The seller price is 100 ISK above that, the buyers are 200 ISK below the average price on the chart, and yet here we get this super stable average 4,842. No matter what the volume seemed to do, okay, must be something that is being traded on both the seller side and the buyer side, and apparently super balanced in the last I don't know, 3 weeks or so. We've got the phenolic composites next, diving down, heading back to less than 2,000 ISK. That is interesting potentially. Buyers at less than 1,900 ISK here, sellers at less than 2,000 ISK. That is definitely a 1 year low point here for phenolic composites. And then we've got the steel ceramic fibers that are flat at 450. So again, trading well below their average, 474 for the sellers, 434 for the buyers. But I wouldn't call this a 1 year low point because of the November dip here to less than 400 ISK. So the advanced move materials are in a pretty bad spot on average. We don't really see any of them that are trading like above average or spiking up a lot, but what we do see of course is that from time to time we've got some 1 year lows that are being tested and some positions that are being taken because of the increased volumes. Let's move on to the Take-Two ships. Of course, with such a moon material market, we can't expect too much there, but it is gonna be at 28.30. And yeah, my stealth bombers and my logistics ships do still show some volatility from time to time. So let's see if we can spot some opportunities there. The Ares very flat at less than 27.5 million ISK. Buyers are coming in at 25.2. Basically, if you want an interceptor, you get a cheap one right now. But is this the ship you want to be trading in? I don't think so. The Basilisk, after reaching that 1 year low point again of 200 million ISK, is working its way back up here. 240 already for the sellers. Buyers still at 200 million though, so making that trade is not gonna be easy, but if this has any momentum, perhaps. And yeah, buying for 200 million, selling for 240 million. Is it because of trade hub action? 7 jumps out? Not really. Here it's 217, 210, but it's only one of them. So no, it's not because of trade up action. This is a very wide margin of 40 million ISK between buyers and sellers compared to a base price of 200 million. That's quite a lot, a surprising a lot here between sellers and buyers, and it's not even up by that much. So let's hope that this has some momentum and that the people that have been buying slowly, I hope, will have a nice sell opportunity again at a high price. Next up, we've got the Cerberus. That's actually going up in price as well. 283 million because of a lack of supply all of a sudden. 255 for the buyers. That is up here. Trying to get back to that average of the first half of the year very slowly. Will it stay there? I don't think so. Personally, I think supply will start to drop in on that opportunity. Next up, we've got the Crow. Down a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but staying above 30 million on average. 31.6 for the sellers, 29.1 for the buyers. Then we've got the Guardian with that great spike here up to 300 million ISK, with being below 230 at the moment. 224 for the sellers, 211 for the buyers. It's not the very best by opportunity, so I would still be patient. Yeah, the Basilisk seems to be willing to move to that really low point and is on its way back up. The Guardian, still that slow pressure, slow downward trend on the 5-day moving average, which is the blue chart here. I'd be patient a little bit more with the Guardian. Then we've got the Heretic. Oh yeah, the interdictors were all very, very low in the last couple of weeks. Here is the Heretic, just above 60 million on the chart, 67 for the sellers, but 41 million for the buyers. I personally do think that you can grab some of these if you work your way up a little bit in the buy price. You'll find someone that's impatient enough to sell at maybe 50 million or between 50 and 60 million, and that is still well below the chart here. So yeah, the lack of demand for the Heretic at the moment I think creates an opportunity, but you'll have to be somewhat aggressive with your buy price. Then we've got the Hound. That was nice, right? Able to sell for 27 million, buy for 27 million, and here we had a spike up to at least an average of around 40 million ISK, working its way back down. And I'm not sure if I managed to sell mine. Sellers coming in at 33 million ISK, buyers at 30, and we still see, yeah, my 4 are still stuck here. Damn it. I'm gonna leave them there. We'll see what happens in the upcoming weeks and months. We still have more than 2 months to try to get the sale going, but this is why I like the Take-Two market and why I especially like at the moment the logistics and the stealth bombers. They do still have some interesting spikes from time to time. The ones that are interesting, I think, for the longer term, medium term perhaps, could be these interdictors, because for some reason there's just zero demand for them. But yeah, the Hound coming back down from a nice sell opportunity basically. The Ishtar still down, also 230 million, playing with that 1 year low point, so it's less than 230 for the sellers and 223 million for the buyers. Definitely an opportunity as well. Manticore next, staying above 30 million. That is unfortunate. Sellers coming in at 33 million, buyers at 29 million. It's not super pronounced, so I would say be more patient. The Munin actually went back to more than 250 million and is apparently trying to stay there. 251, 252 for the sellers and 221 for the buyers, though very wide margin again. And so if you do manage to grab one from a buy order, I do think you're making a good purchase. The Nemesis going back down, very interesting. So here again, we in February, late January, early February, you could have very easily bought Nemesis for way less than 25 million ISK here. Try to sell them at 30 million, not super pronounced, but we're already on our way back down quite with a lot of momentum on volume. So this should be able to, if this is really more than 200 of them coming in one day, and then here another 150 on another day, this might actually overshoot by quite a lot and create another buy opportunity. Now it's 27 million for the sellers and already 24 million is for the buyers. I would wait for this to crash down even more because of these volumes and hope to really grab some cheap Nemesis in the upcoming week. I think it is possible. Oneros next, flat at 200 million, a bit above that, 216 for the sellers, 176 again for the buyers. The one warning for the Oneros though, abysmal volumes, very difficult to make a trade in this ship. Then we get the Purifier. Again, why do we like the stealth bombers? Buy them for less than 30 million ISK, sell them for 40. And then in less than a month, we are working our way back down. 32 million for the sellers, 28 million already again for the buyers of Purifiers. You can see the volumes here causing the decrease in price. Not as bad as what we're seeing with the Nemesis. So the Purifier, gotta keep an even closer eye on that one. I think if it will overshoot and create another massive buy opportunity, I think the chance is lower than for the Nemesis. And then we get a Saber coming off of a 1-year low point of 65 million ISK here, 67 for the sellers, 62 million for the buyers. Super cheap for these interdictors, and now they're actually trading at that well below average price range here. An opportunity, but I've yet to see an actual spike materialize. So we'll need to see a big fight with interdictors, I think, in order for that to happen. But this is, I think, the right time to grab a Saber, to try to grab a Heretic, and then be patient. Then we get the Scimitar, 1-year low point, 5-day moving average now for more than a week, straight down to less than 200 million ISK. Sellers coming in at 199, buyers at 189. That is again another one that has better volumes by a lot, but pretty much double of the Oneros. So if I would be buying right now for a logistics cruiser, I would make my move on the Scimitar. And then we get the Stiletto. Not a 1-year low point just yet, but definitely breaking through the 30 million mark, 28.9 for the sellers and 26 million for the buyers. It's an interceptor. Unfortunately, we're not seeing the same type of volatility as what we're seeing, for instance, in the stealth bombers and the logistics cruisers. So make your choices, but there's definitely opportunities in the Tech 2 market at the moment. Next up, we'll have the Tech 3 market coming in at 36.25, let's say. Like that. And as always, well, from the ticker you may have seen that the Tengu is back to its 170 million price range, at least in GTAS. So that's a bit of a recovery there. Should mean more volumes. We'll see. I was a bit worried by the lack of availability in the cruiser market, and the destroyer market seemed pretty stable at the moment, with enough supplies, nothing too crazy. So let's get started here with the Confessor. 38.4 million for the sellers, 36 million for the buyers, and availability just like last week. We do have one sell order of 113, but everything else is in the dozens and some individual sales, nothing too major. This feels like, again, the average price in a well-supplied Confessor market, but definitely no real signs of oversupply just yet. The Hecate is also flat at 40 million this week, 40 million for the sellers, 37.5 for the buyers, and again, these volumes are quite nice, quite normal. 2 dozen, most of them 1 of 60, that's the biggest sell order, nothing crazy. This is definitely alright and pretty stable. Then we've got the Jackdaw that is going back down a little bit in price to 45 million ISK, so 45.3 million for the sellers, 42 million for the buyers. And again, probably the most popular tactical destroyer in my opinion, because of the missiles. It's an incredible ship. I absolutely love it for exploration as well. I would say Jackdaw most popular, Confessor second, Hecate PvP, so that's going to be third, and then the final one is Fable. So the price ranges on that, I think, pretty much reflect that. Jackdaw at 45 million, but again with the availability being alright, nothing crazy, quite doable. And then we've got the Zwepel, that is in my opinion the least popular one at 38 million ISK, also decently flat over the last week or 10 days or so. 38 million for the sellers, 34 million for the buyers, and again here we get 83, 65, 30, but other than that it's pretty much what's on display, and that makes for the least popular tactical destroyer, I think, an alright supply as well. So the destroyers are in their right spot. I think an average price, a normal price, you're not paying too much, you're not paying too little, and you can pretty easily get them from the market. Now let's see if the volumes have increased or anything like that in the cruiser market. So here we get the Legion, definitely down a little bit in price as well over the last month or so, and in fact accelerated in the last week, I would say. 172 million for the sellers and 160 for the buyers, and this is not the way I expected to see this, but it's 107 Legions that someone put on the market all of a sudden. Other than that one, 14, 28, 19, it's definitely better, and you get slightly more availability, so this still feels alright. It's just who the hell has 107 Legions available to just dump on the market, when I think last week we were talking maybe a dozen as the biggest one or something like that. So this price has been driven down on all of a sudden, about 100 Legions coming in here, despite the drop in price, I would say. Is this perhaps a relisting? It's possible, but this does mean that it's kind of in a weird spot. On a couple of weeks in the cruiser market, you get the idea that there's just none available, and just a purchase of a couple dozen is going to drive the price through the roof, and then all of a sudden you see 100 of them show up on the market. Here for the Loki, also the same price pattern, definitely down to less than 200 million ISK here all of a sudden, selling for 196, buyers coming in at 185, and this is more in line with what I would expect. Then so you've got the plus 200 mark, where you get the 20s, the 10s, the dozens. You know, a little bit less, let's say half of what the destroyer market shows in volumes, and then you've got the competition in less than 10 that is currently driving the price back down. But this could still move either way. This is not like 100 Lokis in one sell order that's gonna keep the price from moving back up. So here for the Loki, down a little bit on more supply, but easily absorbable, and feels like it's back in an okay spot for its own supplies. And I've got a Proteus slightly up towards 180 million ISK, so it's 176 to 161, and this is pretty much, well, we still have 68 here at 200 million, but this is all there is for the sellers of Protea, and so it's a lack of supply that is slowly driving the price back up. Must also be said, just like with the Zwepel, we should keep in mind that the Proteus is the least popular tactical cruiser at the moment. And then we have the Tengu, which we saw went back down towards 175 on the ticker. So sellers coming in now at 175, buyers at 168, and availability, yeah, at least we've got a couple more, and the sell orders tend to be in less than 10 when it comes to their volume. So the Tengu recovered a little bit. Let's see if we can find some more Protea to bring everything back in a well-supplied situation for this week. That would be my read on the Tech 3 market, especially in the destroyers. We're alright on all fronts, no real signs of oversupply, and still really good supply and an average price. For the cruisers, get some weird stuff happening here and there, but overall this does feel like, yeah, 180 and then around 200 million for the more popular Loki is the normal price for these ships at the moment. And then we have a request for the extra product this week. It was, I think it was described as a drone components, and I'm gonna assume that you mean the rogue drone materials. So we're gonna take a look at that at 4230. And that should be in manufacturing and research, and then we have materials, and then here we go, I got it ready. Rogue drones, I think this is what you meant, drone capillary fluid for instance, flat on well, maybe slightly above average if we assume that this is a continuation of the last year or so. Currently selling for 645,000 ISK, 635,000 for the buyers. Super narrow margin, very stable price for the drone capillary fluids. Drone cerebral fragment, down to a less than average price. definitely went to a low point of less than 100,000 ISK here. Currently selling at 120, buyers coming in at 106. Not much to say, also seems to be decently stable with one noticeable spike here in October. Same thing for the capillary fluids. Then we get the coronary unit that is down to a 1 year low point on lots of supplies. You can see here that this was driven down towards, let's see what it costs now, 1.9 million for the sellers, 1.8 million for the buyers. 150 here, 160 here, 140 here. So we still have competition with pretty big volumes despite the price going to less than 2 million ISK. So drone coronary units, well, if you expect this to turn around at some point, this is a 1 year low point that you could start to purchase on for less than 2 million ISK. Drone epidermal shielding. Ooh, did a dive down from 35,000 ISK to 16,000 ISK. He's now trying to recover a little bit, but is also selling at really low prices, 21,700 for the sellers, less than 20,000 ISK for the buyers. Potential sell range 35-40k is possible for your consideration. Drone synaptic relay wiring, basically flat at a less than average price, just above 7,500 ISK, 8,200 for the sellers, 8,000 ISK for the buyers. Not much to say, of course, for the cheaper ones that are readily available. Drone tactical limb, flat at around 20,000 ISK here. It's its normal price. I would say when it's well supplied, 21,000 for the sellers, 19,500 for the buyers. And then we've got the Elite Drone AI that also went to a 1 year low point of less than 4 million ISK, now selling for 4.8 million, buyers coming in at 4.6 million. So that bottom seems to have been formed. Let's see if this upwards momentum has any movement has any momentum, but definitely makes this chart very interesting. You can see that the Elite Drone AI just did its turnaround and the coronary unit is at its 1 year low point. So if you're looking for an investment here, I would say, yeah, Rogue Drone Materials, Drone Coronary Unit could actually be in the right spot to grab at the right time. Elite Drone AI just coming from a 1 year low point. We should have been here last week. Then we would have been able to grab these for less than 4 million ISK at the moment. Very interesting. Definitely a good suggestion. I hope that it is what you wanted to ask. Just to do maybe an extra check if you it's the excavator, I think, is like the most complex drone that exists here. And if we go for its industrial output, you get some minerals. Then electronic parts is PI. Then you get a little bit of morphite. And then you've got ion thrusters. Not sure what these come from, but they don't really look like drone stuff. And then you've got these here, drone synaptic wiring, drone fluids, drone cerebral, the coronary units as well, and the Elite Drone AI. So I think it was this segment that you wanted me to look at. And there we go. I wonder what these are actually. Ion thrusters, few... Manufacturing research, components, advanced components, Galente. Alright, so this is like Tech 2 stuff that is in that complex Tech 2 manufacturing industry side of the game, which is very difficult for an individual player to get into, because you do need the entire chain of that to work. You can see that it's not just components, advanced components, but then it's Galente as well. So that one is super complex and I'm not really too familiar with that. If you ever want to know more about that, I do think you want to join an alliance in Nullsec, get in touch with the industrialist directors there and see if you can learn from them. But this doesn't feel like it's a part of the game that's too available for solo players. Still, the materials that we just checked, of course. Where were they? Materials. No. God damn it. I already lost my category. Planetary materials, faction materials. Nope. That's not what I was looking for. Named components. Nope. Not what I was looking for. Well, we'll figure. Luckily, I managed to find it for covering the extra product. So most of those are drops. So those are actually, something that you can get yourself if you absolutely want to try and do that. So yeah, there you go, guys. It's gonna be the Rogue drone materials then as the extra product. I hope that it was the actual request, and that's gonna be it for this Eve Talk. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.